Michael, thank you very much for making this interview possible. I would ask you first, what is your architectural concept on academic institutions?
A university is more than just a collection of buildings. We know this because when we remember universities, we remember great universities, we remember Harvard, we remember Harvard Yard, and we remember the quadrangles at Yale, and we remember the courtyards of the colleges at Oxford and Cambridge. And I remember the great lawn at Givat Ram, your other university downtown. And it's these open spaces, these what I call outdoor rooms, which are peculiar, singular to universities. And they're the outdoor living rooms where the life of the university takes place to a very large extent. They're the places, for example, which I think are most important in universities, where that kind of serendipitous encounter of student with student or student with professor or professor with professor that is not planned, and it's just a momentary thing, and one sits down and has a conversation, for a short conversation, which might change one's life. And so a building on a university must contribute to that idea of the commonwealth of spaces. The making of such a space is perhaps not quite as evident as it is when you just form the other fourth side of a quadrangle, but it's there very strongly.
Michael, can you say a few words about the location in the campus that was chosen for the Mandel Building?
Originally, when we first started this project with the university and with Mort, we looked at several sites on the campus. And some of them were sites which overlooked the old city. And, you know, for an architect to build, to design, overlooking what is, when all said and done, the cradle of, I know it's a cliche, but the cradle of our civilization, the cradle of our built civilization, is just a dream. For all sorts of practical reasons, it became, I thought, impossible. And I had the very, very difficult, I can say heart-wrenching task of telling Mort that I really didn't think that that site would work, overlooking the Dome of the Rock. I thought that's my last chance of doing anything like that. We then found this site, which we were shown this site, and we stood there, Mort and I, and of course we got to that site by walking through the garden, through the botanical garden. And then you break through the garden on the edge of the precipice, overlooking this desert that stretches out for endlessly towards the Jordanian mountains. And I just was speechless. And I said to Mort, well, it's not the cradle of civilization, but perhaps this is a better site for your building, because it overlooks the desert and it adjoins the garden, and that building will join these two together. And I think that metaphorically that's a marvelous notion for your building and your vision of what the humanities can do. And in this way, the botanical gardens, we hope, will be enlivened by the passage of people from students and faculty back and forth from the main building to the new Mandel Building. This garden will become more the centre, more the heart of the university. I think that's particularly appropriate because campus is campo and campo is field, and so the whole idea of that this magical field, this botanical garden, can play a much more central role in the life of the university is, I think, a contribution that the Mandel Building will make far beyond its walls, and I think that's most appropriate in a university setting.
What was the concept of the Mandel Building at the Hebrew University?
It wasn't my concept. The concept of the building stems, truthfully, from Mort. Mort's idea always conveyed very clearly to us, but never as a sort of mandate, but just as an idea, that in some way the people in the building should be, by the building, brought together and in a way in which their ideas would be interchanged and passed one from the other and become greater than the sum of the parts. And so it was quite clear that this has a building manifestation. The building must then make those spaces beyond the functional requirements of the offices for the professors and the students, beyond the functional requirements of this many people in a lecture hall. It must provide those places, and they're not it's not just space. They have to be places that people can feel comfortable in doing other than just running down the corridor from one room to another. Well, we began with the idea that because it had to be a multi-floor building, that each floor should, in effect, create a kind of familial context, create a kind of family atmosphere. And so on each floor there's a kitchen where, as we know in the household, all the real interchange of ideas happen around the kitchen table. And it's not just a galley kitchen, it's a room. It's a real room that you can go into and sit down and have your sandwich or whatever. Just beyond that kitchen on each floor is a living room, just as there would be in a house. And then there are the scholars' cells, the scholars' studies, which are quite frugal, deliberately, in a way, to prompt them to leave their room when they're absolutely exhausted from the battles with the PhD thesis, and walk down the corridor and meet a friend. And then I can tell you that without doubt, that the opening phrase of each sentence, every sentence in those rooms will be, "How's the paper going?" or "How's the thesis going?" And that will then, and there will be a place to sit there, and that will, I hope the building will realize Mort's vision. But then there is the ideas that are spawned in this building must enter the public domain. They must enter the public domain. And that's the purpose of the top floor of the building, where there are these great seminar rooms, which, if I can be self-congratulatory, I think are rather special rooms. They're sitting on the top of the building, they're enclosed with glass, so there's no question that this is a public space. This is where you're in the public realm. And it's here that the ideas that are born downstairs then become manifest they become public. And they have to, at that point, like ideas have to become, they're open then to public scrutiny, and they become modified by that and judged by that. And they're on the top of the building, surrounded by glass, and so they're in an intermediary space between the closed cell of the scholar, where everything is introverted appropriately and private struggle. Then it becomes into the public realm in these great glass wall seminar rooms. And so those were some of the ideas that were generative in the design of the building. But I must stress again, these ideas came in their conceptual form from Mort Mandel and his view of what the advanced study of the humanities, a house for that should be all about.
Could you say a few words about your personal and professional relations with Mr. Mort Mandel?
I'm very eager to be able to record at least something of what I feel about Mort. This is the third building that I have designed for Mort, and which he's given to universities. The first was at Case Western University in his hometown of Cleveland. The second was at Brandeis, where we worked with Yehuda Reinhardt, who was the president, and now the third at the Hebrew University. This has been a long time, a long association, been the association that in my fairly long professional career I will treasure the most in personal terms. My time that I've spent with Mort have always been inspirational, because Mort is a man who sees everything in positive terms, in the possibilities, never in the things that can't be done or shouldn't be done, but always in terms of opportunity. And this is really very important for an architect to have as reinforcement from a client. In personal terms, I have come over the years to respect and I would say revere Mort, and also, if I might add, love him.